Hi, greetings, it's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and this is the 10th video in my entrepreneurship series. And this video is on human resource management. And I think this is one of the most important topics that you should really consider if you're an entrepreneur or considering being an entrepreneur, because it has to do with human resource management, which is really all about the considerations for making sure that you understand the processes of effectively hiring the right employee and the laws that pertain to it, and then making sure that that employee is happy. I'm a firm believer that it just takes one person, the weak link, to bring down any team, and that's including your business. And also, on the other hand, a great employee can help build your business. So choosing the right employee really can make an important difference. I can think about a brand new business that was built in my hometown. They had bought a brand new building and built it up from the ground up. It was vacant land before this building went up, and it was a restaurant. And I wanted to take my daughter to this brand new restaurant, and I noticed there were no customers in there. As a matter of fact, when we went in and we went to the sign that said, "Please wait to be seated," we couldn't see any employees there, and I was wondering whether or not the store was really open or not. Well, finally, after about 10 minutes of waiting, literally 10 minutes of waiting, I noticed that there was a little coffee bar around the corner, and one of the employees that was supposed to take us to our seat was over there chit-chatting with this employee. She didn't even apologize, and she just took us over and gave us a seat. Well, it took about 5 minutes for her to come over and give us our menus. And then, after we had our menus, it took about another 20 minutes for her to come and take our order. Well, once she took our order, about 45 minutes passed. And she came back with our orders, didn't say much. She threw the plates down. I asked for some water. And when I started eating my fried chicken, the chicken was still frozen in the middle. Well, I ended up actually paying for the meal, didn't eat it all. I actually left her a little tip. I always like to tip. And I felt like I never wanted to go there again. And I suspect that most of the people who gave that restaurant a try probably felt the same way if she treated even half the employees that way. This is why training is so important, and then following up on the training. But it really is true. One employee can help build your business or ruin your business. So you have to understand the right things to do. And hopefully you're going to find this video helpful to you. We're going to talk about what elements are in human resources, the hiring processes, what it takes to retain employees. We're going to talk a little bit about probation and firing and regulations and laws. And so it really is an important decision when you are running your own business or considering your own business to make sure that you're doing the right thing and understanding the right processes. And that really is one of the problems why so many new businesses fail, because people with good ideas don't have the right systems in place. With human resource, it really is a quantity and quality effort. And if you have good people who are managing your company's operations and every employee doing the right thing, this really is about human resources. Some organizations have human resource management departments, and they're the ones that do things in the hiring processes and the managing, help managers make the best decisions. They create job descriptions, job advertisement. They help understand about rules and laws on discrimination. They help conduct job interviews. They facilitate the testing and help make the job offerings. Human resource professionals focus on retaining employees and compensation and benefit systems and wages and hour requirements and performance reviews, dealing with difficult employees. All of these things fall under human resources. Generally speaking, large companies have one human resource professional for about every 100 employees. Small businesses, generally there's a manager who does other duties besides the human resource management processes. So you have to consider that if you're a small business, you end up being the Jack or Jill of all trades. In the hiring process, it really is important to consider the employee impact. You as an owner, it takes time away from doing other things, and you might consider hiring and outsourcing human resource company to help put the right systems in place. Hiring the wrong person the wrong way could lead to lawsuits. So some processes in the hiring process, the hiring steps are creating a job description, being very clear on what that job is that you need is all about, advertising the job, interviewing, doing testing, and making the job offering. So with a job description, it really is important that you have a really good idea about what the person needs to be able to do. What kind of skills, training, education, knowledge does this person have to have? Really, in every type of organization, all organizations should have a job description. It really helps the employee understand what's expected of him or her, and it helps the manager know what to look for in managing each employee. You'd be surprised how many businesses out there don't have job descriptions, and that causes a little bit of confusion from time to time, if you can imagine. So job descriptions are very, very important. And very often, as an organization grows, maybe job descriptions need to change. And so there's a lot of, you can hire subcontractors in a lot of organizations to do different things. And so being able to have the right employee really means having a clear idea of what that employee needs to do and what skills, knowledge, and abilities that person has to have. Job advertising is another thing. Job advertising is all about attracting the largest pool of applicants possible. You want to hire the right person, so you got to be able to have the right resources. Some ways to look for people are college placement offices, trade associations, employment agencies, putting a sign in the window if you have physical location. There's lots of virtual discussion boards that you might be able to find. I've even heard of people posting jobs on like Craigslist, for instance. So you could use the newspaper in a help wanted section. Some people don't even know what a newspaper is these days, but it's a very traditional area to post jobs, and people looking for jobs can buy a newspaper for that very reason. On the internet, one of my favorite resources is LinkedIn.com, and everybody should have a LinkedIn.com account. Some jobs they require very, very unique skills. So you've got to be very clear on how much you're willing to spend for an advertisement. And then you need to make sure that you're writing it the right way. You have to make it very distinct. You are writing an ad to sell the job, and you need to be honest in the way that you write it. You might ask for a resume and a short list of references. And you need to make sure a very clear deadline for submission. So think about what kind of criteria, as someone who's hiring, that you want to evaluate. Make sure that those qualifications are very, very clear. The Supreme Court has had a huge part in how human resource professionals do their jobs. They really help clarify what the Equal Opportunity Commission does, and these are laws that employers that have 15 or more employees must adhere to. Every organization needs to be very careful about discrimination. Hiring people, dismissing people, the level of pay, promotions, based on race, color, gender, religious beliefs, or national origin of the employee. These kinds of things are prohibited by state law. Job descriptions and job advertisements must use non-discriminatory language. You have to avoid terms like salesman, handyman, young, or counter girl, for instance. Advertising widely and using a job description to judge every single person on the same basis. So, salesperson, counter person would be more effective. And on the job application, you need to ask for some of the essentials. Obviously, name, address, phone number, and email address. You got to be able to contact the potential applicant. Addresses for the past 3 years are very common. Some people ask for a social security number. I'm a little on the edge about asking for that before hiring. Depending on whether or not driving is a qualification, you might ask for a driver's license number. Work history can help you understand patterns on what a person can do and has done, and skills that they probably bring to an organization, and the kind of stability that they bring. You know, what kind of job growth potential do they have? Maybe date available for work might be something that should be considered. Education and training is really important. Professional organizational memberships, conviction record might be something that you want to look for. Citizen information. And then sometimes you could ask for references. A lot of the time references are asked for after a person has passed the interviewing process. In the interview, applicants that best fit the job description should be considered for an interview. Discriminatory topics like age, race, disability, gender, national origin, religion, and creed should be wiped out of your interview. You have to be objective, and you cannot be using any language that's related to any of those discriminatory topics. The interview discussion must be based on the needs of the job, and you must be able to provide a realistic job preview of the job when you are interviewing the employee. I think references are really important too. I've seen people use bosses to get rid of an employee as a reference, and so the boss chose not to say anything bad about employees, and I think that happens all the time. And most of the time, if you're creating a reference list, you're probably choosing people who are naturally going to say good things about you. So you got to keep that in mind. So you do have to have an open mind about candidates after the interview and background checked. And it's always good to conduct a second interview. You know, use your gut to make sure that you are really seeing if this person is the right person to hire. And having continuous records of all advertisements of who responded to the job criteria is important too. In some organizations, drug testing would be important. I know in Washington State, where I live, in Colorado, marijuana is legal, so there's probably an implication there. Maybe basic math test, if the person handles money, would be important. Or personality testing and behavior testing are really important things to be able to understand who your employees are. The top candidate gets the job, and so you get to make them a job offer. And sometimes you might have a little bit of wiggle room in what they can negotiate, so be prepared for them to negotiate. Once an offer is agreed upon, you need to put it in writing and make sure that it's signed by the candidate, and then give the candidate a signed copy for themselves. So after that, you need to make sure that you're retaining your employees. You know, some people pay competitive wages and make sure that the compensation and benefit package is better than other people in their area that they're competing for talent. It's probably the one way that organizations are able to attract and maintain talent of organizations, is they really have to look at their compensation and benefit packages. Equity is a big deal we are always, as employees, comparing the way that we're treated. And so every manager needs to make sure that they're not choosing favorites, they're not having people in out groups and in groups, but you have to maintain equity, a feeling of equity in how you treat people. Because people are always comparing each other with what they're getting. So people who have been at the company for the same amount of time and doing the same job, no matter what their gender is, should be making the same amount of money. People should be given pay raises on a regular basis and based on very clear criteria. They're meeting the criteria, and you need to be making that criteria obtainable that they should receive that. Different ways organizations pay employees hourly wage. You pay a certain amount. Of course, there's a minimum wage law in every state that you have to make sure that you are following. Salary is a set amount of money given for a period of time. Commission is very common in a lot of startup organizations, especially in sales. Commissions are a great way to help people to produce higher levels, especially draw more business into your business. You can have some sort of hybrid compensation method where you have commission and sales. Profit sharing is another thing that's important. It gives your employees something hard to work for. If they help grow the business to a certain amount of profits, they each get a certain percentage of those profits. Bonus systems are something else to consider. You need to make sure that you're being fair about it and that the goals can be approached. But when people meet certain goals, you want them to meet more goals in your organization. So make them realistic and make it worth their while. Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA, is an established minimum wage for workers. It's considered to be a living wage, and it's an index wage based on 40 hours. It keeps people out of poverty, essentially. And the Equal Pay Act requires the same wage for men and women, and FLSA requires organizations to pay overtime, and child labor laws really must be considered. So these are some of the legal considerations with pay. Benefits are really important too. You need to make sure that people have paid vacations if they're working for you full time. Holidays, sick leave, medical care, retirement plans. So all of these things cost your company money, but they're an investment in your people, and they're an investment in your business because you want to make sure that people stay with your organization. You also want them to grow with your organization, and so you need to make sure that you're doing performance reviews on a regular basis. Some people do them yearly, some people do them half yearly, and some people do them monthly or quarterly. It does take time to do it right, but there should usually be some kind of reward associated, and it really helps individuals understand how they're doing and what the expectations of them are. And so it really is one of the most important things that we can do. And of course, as a manager, you shouldn't wait till the end of the year to beat your employees up with an evaluation and say you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong. You should try to help set them up for success by, on a daily basis, praising good work. And when you see people not doing things the right way, you need to help them not struggle but add value to the organization. You don't want to lose them. They want to feel good about their jobs. You need to help them feel good about their jobs so they truly are successful in helping you meet your organizational goals, right? So it's sometimes employees can go bad. And I'm kind of a firm believer that if an employee goes bad, it's one of two things. Either one, you did a bad job hiring someone and you didn't screen for their character well enough, and maybe they fooled you. Or two, you just didn't pay enough attention as a manager to your employees and help guide them back to doing the right thing. and you didn't have clear expectations involved as a manager. And so very often when you have a good employee go bad because you try to hire the best candidate, it probably is your fault as a manager. I'm a firm believer that as a manager, you got to take full responsibility for what goes on with your employees. And some things are out of control, but gosh, it's more expensive to lose an employee than it is to help bring them back to do the right thing, right? So you must have a legitimate, well-documented reason for firing an employee. You must provide opportunity for improvement. We call that progressive discipline. You need to make sure that you develop some kind of paper trail where you have that documentation. And sometimes you may have a non-compete or secrecy agreement that you've made with them, but you need to make sure that you have the right documentation to show that things were progressive and that the worker clearly did violate expectations. All entrepreneurs must be concerned with, but may be impacted differently by various laws, like workers' compensation, occupational safety and health, unemployment compensation, and American with Disabilities Acts. Workers' compensation, these are laws that employees who are disabled or injured while on the job are provided with some type of compensation. And workers' compensation insurance is regulated by the state and costs different things in different states. Payments to qualified workers are limited to partial wage replacement and medical bills. And usually the employee cannot sue for the injury after receiving workers' compensation payments. OSHA, and that stands for Occupational Safety and Health Administration. This is the organization that's charged with protecting the health of workers. OSHA is usually more lenient towards small businesses, and appropriate record keeping is required, and there are some fines that usually take place, and in some industries, regardless of size, they must meet OSHA requirements. Unemployment compensation is something else to consider. Financial assistance for a period of time for those who lose their jobs through no fault of their own, provided by law in each state. It differs. And the person receiving payments must be looking for a job, and the entrepreneur finds a system by paying a tax, and that tax rate varies in every state. The Americans with Disabilities Act, that really applies to firms with 15 or more employees, and requires every business to provide access to all people regardless of disability. And so at a minimum, like ramps, elevators, braille signs, these kinds of things need to be adapted. And entrepreneurs may be required to offer special accommodations to employees, and in some states and cities they have additional requirements beyond the ADA, so you've got to be aware of what's expected in your state. One difference in the hiring process is that you have to really make sure that you eliminate all issues of discrimination. You never want to give anybody reason to think that they were discriminating against. Hiring family members is another consideration. People's different roles in the family may bring value to your organization, but if there's conflict, that may bring up some bigger challenges for you in the longer run as an entrepreneur, so it's something that you have to consider. And very often as we get older and you're running your business, you have to think about who's going to take over the organization and make sure you have some kind of succession plan in place. So given you a lot to think about in this 10th video on entrepreneurship with the topic of human resources. I hope that I've given you something of value that you can take away and that you've enjoyed the video. And more importantly, I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it. I'm Dr. Paul Gerhardt.